But he's like, if I had gone to the hospital and insisted that I was a man, not a trans man, and denied that I was a biological female, I would have died. This is a play. We can't care so much about how we identify when it comes to medicine, because this is do or die territory. It doesn't matter. Science doesn't care about your pronouns. Science doesn't care about your identity. And I think it was also in one of your newsletters, you were saying that CVS took off sex on like their COVID forms, and it's now just gender identity. And I was curious, like, A, does that matter? Does it matter on either end for like something like a vaccine or something like COVID?
It's probably less important for something like COVID,
Mm-hmm.
even though there is like a sex difference. Males seem to be more susceptible to COVID. I think,
I didn't know that.
I don't know the exact stats. I think it's like 50% more likely
Oh,
to
wow.
die of COVID. Um, and so, with respect to the vaccine, it might not be, that important, but maybe we'll need to know, if there's a sex difference in side effects and things like that. It's important to know if there's actually a sex difference. And you might say, like, well, it's just so few people that are going to actually be, males that are going to put down female or something. But it's
Mm-hmm.
still data that's, you're just adding noise to the data. And that's just not something we should do, just knowingly make the data messier,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just a few people. So in some contexts, it might not have really bad consequences, but in others, I mean, it definitely could if, like in Buck's case, I mean, his sex on his birth certificate really matters to
Mm-hmm.
tell doctors. Um, there's different ways that things like heart attacks manifest themselves in males or females, like the symptoms. And so if you're telling the doctor these are your symptoms, if they don't know your sex or they're wrong about your sex, that could lead to a wrong diagnosis. So it's
Mm-hmm.
we just need to be frank about someone's sex in certain contexts. I mean, I'm always saying that I'm open to calling people by their preferred pronouns
Mm-hmm.
in sort of a social situation, and it's out of respect for them as an individual, and I don't want to increase their dysphoria. I mean, I'm pretty accommodating, but it's just when it comes to certain areas in society where we need to actually be honest about your sex, like in sports and what prison you're going to go to and medical records and things like that, then it's, I mean, we need to be like adults in the room and just be like, I'm sorry, I mean, I know you're how you identify, but this is your actual sex and this is important and here's why. And that shouldn't be a controversial thing to
Mm-hmm.
to say, but yeah, a lot of people just want them to be treated as the sex they claim to be in all contexts. Even to the case where, I mean, you get some people, and this is a very small minority, but there's cases of trans women wanting to get, like going in for like a pap smear or something, where it's just like, why are you even, you don't have a cervix, like there's nothing for them to smear.
Right.
like Buck, he said on the Clubhouse, like he wouldn't go in for a prostate exam, even though some trans men claim to, or sorry, trans women, sorry, no, trans men claim to be going in for these exams. Completely pointless. It's just medical theater at that point, just to
Mm-hmm.
reinforce your identity or something. Like this is a waste of time and money and resources. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the prison
yeah.
thing is fascinating as well. And I think what's really curious is Buck also brought up a good point with this is we're seeing a lot of biological men that are, self-identifying to switch over to the women's prison, which should be so obvious that this is a terrible idea. But for some reason, we're like, no, we want to be compassionate and inclusive, so let's let them loose in there. And Buck was like, is anyone thinking about me? Is anyone thinking about trans men? Because if that's the case, do we have to put trans men in male prisons? Because that's also a terrible idea. He's like, I would be killed. I'd be killed because he saw
Mm-hmm.
a vagina. We
Yeah.
we see where that's
Yeah.
going. And I think in your news article, it was like over 200 requests were sent for as it stood
Yeah.
for like the
I
year
think
in
it was
California.
260 just in
Yeah.
California. Yeah. And in a recent attempt in, I think, Washington State, someone put in a Freedom of Information Act request to the state to try to find out how many, people who are being transferred or who are claiming to be trans go to women's prisons are actually being transferred. And the ACLU stepped in and filed a lawsuit against them to prevent the government from, or prevent the prisons from giving the information out. So it's just like, what's going on there? I mean, I usually liken this to, like, as I said before, you don't just deny a whole aspect of reality without bad, things coming up and exposing it for how flawed it really is. And to me, like, trans, or people claiming to be trans, exploiting gender ideology and sex spectrum pseudoscience stuff to just like transfer prisons to get in a female prison, like, that's just like an example of this kind of coming back to bite you. Like, it's clearly a flawed ideology. This is what you would expect when you're denying such a big fundamental aspect of reality.